The Court of Miracles. This is a game set in 16th century Paris. Players control guilds of thieves and beggars, and they're trying to gain as much renown as possible to gain control of the city. The board, as you can see, is very colorful, very nice looking. It represents a stylized version of Paris at the time. Each player has a card indicating their guild and 6 renown tokens that start on the card and off the board. There are several game effects that you will use to place your renown tokens on the board. In some locations, such as the square here, once you place a token, it stays there. We'll see the details later. Other locations, you can place a token there when you take control of a neighborhood, but then if somebody takes control of that neighborhood from you, then the token is placed back here. If you ever have all of your 6 tokens on the board at the same time, you win the game immediately. There's also this guy here, the Penniless King. It represents the king of all beggars and thieves in Paris. It moves along this track here. If it ever reaches the last space of the track, then the game is over and the player with the most renown on the board wins the game. This is the general idea. Each player starts with 3 rogue tokens. There is a 4th that starts there and can be acquired later by getting the corresponding reward. Each token has a slot on one side so that you can place the cardboard token indicating your guild who controls that token, and then there is a symbol on the other side. That means that when you're looking at these, you need to make sure that you put a finger in the back like this to make sure you don't lose it. You start with 2 soldier tokens or rogues with a combat value of 1 and with a beggar with a combat value of 0. Here there is one with a combat value of 2, but again, you don't have it at the beginning. There's also a bag of other tokens that you can gain later, and you can replace the ones that you have with these upgraded ones. They have different powers, different abilities, different things. But again, not at the beginning. Everybody starts quite weak, but at least everybody starts the same. The main action, really, what you're gonna do each turn is, when it is your turn, you will take one of your rogue tokens that has not been assigned yet, and you will place it on a space on the board. As you can see, their areas with these spaces are grouped in groups of 3, 1 for each neighborhood. And the map looks very pretty, but I wish that the neighborhoods had a little more contrast. But still, you can tell that this is one, this is another, etc., etc. So you take one of your tokens, you look at it, or don't, that's up to you. But without showing what's under the token, you place it in any open space where there isn't a token of another player. After you do that, you must activate the effect of the spot in which you landed, and you can then activate the effect of the neighborhood in which you placed it. For example, if anybody places a token in one of these spaces here with that symbol, then the Penniless King moves by 1 space on its track. And since I placed a token there, then that's what happens. If somebody places a token there, then they collect a coin, a token here on that symbol, they draw a card. You have these cards that will give you different kinds of effects. The effect is self-explanatory, and I really like that they are inspired by the symbology of the tarot that I am very fond of. It's also fascinating because precisely at the time in which this game is set, the 16th century, it is when the tarot started spreading around Europe like wildfire. Very, very successful. So beautiful art and interesting and sometimes very powerful effects. Here you will get a coin, 2 coins up there. So different variants of this kind of effect for the spot in which your rogue token lands. Each neighborhood also has a further effect. So if you place a token here after you resolve the effect of the spot, the effect of the neighborhood is you get to draw a token from this bag with those upgrade tokens and replace 1 tokens that you do not have on the board yet. If all of your tokens are on the board yet already, that doesn't Doesn't work, it doesn't do anything. Other thing is, if all of your tokens are on the board and it's your turn, then you simply move your token from a spot to a spot. So the idea is you take one of your tokens from your supply or from the board and you put it in an empty spot. That's the core of your turn. Other neighborhood that do different things. That one allows you to move a rogue token on the board to another location. This one gives you 2 coins. If you combine it with this one, you get 3 coins. It is the most, the fastest way to get cash in the game. This one allows you to draw a card. And this one, it's very important. Although it's here, it refers to this section of the board here, the Renown Square. The action that you get by placing a token here is that you can spend coins to place one of your renowned tokens here. You can place no more than a token per row. Every player can have one, but you cannot have 2 of yours in the same row. To place a token on the square, you must pay the amount of coins indicated there. If I want that advantage and place a token there, I need to spend 6, 5, 4, etc., etc., etc. So you spend the necessary amount of coins, you place one of your renowned tokens there, and you gain the corresponding advantage, which for this line is you add a 4th token to your supply. So this is usually a line that people want to complete fast. Other things is you move the Penniless King, get a card, get 2 cards, go move the Penniless King by 3 spots. This is the general idea, but what's a standoff? Thank you for asking. I was just going to explain that later. Wow, how did you know that? Great minds do think alike. If there are 3 rogue tokens in a neighborhood, after you resolve the effects, there will be a standoff that needs to be resolved. All players involved show their tokens, and the player with the highest total gains or retains control of the neighborhood. In this case, for example, Cat here has 2, Raven has 1, so this player gets to take control of the neighborhood. If the other player had the most, then they would take control of the neighborhood by placing their renown in that spot there. So control of the neighborhood can change quite fast, quite quickly, and quite often. If there's a tie in the influence that the players have, then the player who has one of their tokens the closest to that spot, the spot with the plus, breaks the tie. That means, on one hand, it's good to get that spot. On the other hand, usually the spots that are further from the tiebreaker have better effects. Here you move the king, here you get a coin. All other things being equal, coins are good because you can buy stuff here for the Renowned Square. That is for standoff. The Penniless King moves, and moves. So when the Penniless King moves to one of those spaces with a red icon and with 2 fingers pointing at a neighborhood, it triggers a standoff in that neighborhood, regardless of what's going on, which can be a quick and easy way to take control of a neighborhood, because right now only the blue player has tokens there, so they win the standoff and they get to place one of their tokens there. If the Penniless King moves to one of these spaces that have the gray icon and the fingers are not pointing to any neighborhood specifically, then the player that moved the king there decides the neighborhood in which a standoff is going to be resolved, which again can be a way of winning a quick and easy standoff in a location in which you are the only player. This is the general idea. Each turn, place one of your rogue tokens, resolve the spot, the effect of the spot, choose to resolve the effect of the neighborhood or not, potentially play cards, trigger standoffs, and continue like this until either all of your renowned tokens are on the board and you win the game, or the Penniless King is on the board and you have the most renowned on the board, in which case you also win the game when the Penniless King goes there. Court of Miracles is very simple. It's a gateway level kind of game. You could play with the people that have only played Monopoly and Clue and you want to show them the better side of gaming. And so, you have your shelf with Lost Cities and Catan and Carcassonne. Court of the Miracles. The Court of Miracles could be right there next to those because it's a really simple but fun game. To tell about the gateway nature and how simple it is, I played it only with my daughters that are currently 8 and 10. So even the 8-year-old can play the game, no problem whatsoever. All of your adult friends, even those that are not usual gamers, can definitely play the game, understand the rules, and after a while see the strategy. Now, from the point of view of the production, everything looks so nice. One thing I would have liked a little more contrast on the board. I just like the idea of seeing the neighborhood more at a glance. It doesn't even matter that much. It's just I spend too much time thinking, okay, which neighbor is that one? Before I even remember. It doesn't matter, but I still spend some time and some mental energy figuring out which one is which. I wish that the one that activates the square was next to the square. Little details like that. I just had the impression the game looks very good. I like it if it looked a little less pretty and with more contrast on the board. Other than that, the game again is solid because you have interesting actions and interactions. The game says you can play with 2 players. I play with 3 only, and I think that's a good number. 3, 4 is probably good. I don't know that I want to play with 2, because then I think the game would be too predictable. Then I would be absolutely certain that if I put the penniless king here, the penniless king cannot reach a certain space during your turn before the game goes back to me. With 2 players, maybe it will, maybe it won't. It depends if the 2 players again get up against me. Oh, wait a second. If we both do that and we put the penniless king there, now we're triggering that confrontation now. And so that loses control of that neighborhood. So I like that, and maybe that I'm doing that, but no, but that's not a good idea for you either, because, and I make stuff up so you don't gang up against me. So actually with 3, 4 players, again, only a 3, I guess 4 that will also work. You have a nice element of diplomacy. And that's why I say I'm not sure that we want to play with more than those, because then it became too chaotic. Then it becomes completely impossible, maybe possibly, to predict, to manipulate things. With 3, you really have a game that seems just about those numbers and just very dry, but in truth, it has a maybe not obvious, but really strong element of diplomacy. Play with my daughters, we're constantly switching alliances and ganging up against whoever was ahead. So you have that interesting social element through interaction. Then you have the bluffing element, which is of course about placing those tiles and try to get an edge in certain locations, trying to distract the opponents. You want them to invest in certain locations that are not super important to you because you're planning at the chains of actions in other places. Timing is so important because I got control of an area and now that is located, but then the penalty comes in, and precisely because it's empty, somebody else can take control of it very easily. So there are a lot of interesting elements, and what is good is that they are fluctuating. Everything is in movement all the time, because the majority in an area can change so fast when a standoff is triggered, when somebody places a token or uses those ability to move tokens around. So everything is in movement, but the game does not feel too chaotic, that the game doesn't feel impossible to control to an extent. I think actually the game gives me what I want in a game, which is a degree of control, so I get the feeling that if I win is because I played well, otherwise I could just play Candyland. And yet at the same time a degree of lack of control, which is of course the obstacle that I am struggling against. And partially it has to do with information I don't know, partially it has to do with diplomacy, that other people are performing better than I do. So you have a range of actions which is not huge. Get a coin, get a card, play a card, but it's interesting enough. It's not huge, so actually the game again is very manageable, very easy to learn and to play, and yet it gives you a lot of nuances based on timing, mainly on combination of actions, certain ways in which I can do this and I do this and that will trigger that thing, that will empty the location, so then I can do the other thing and I may be able to pull it off or not because other players are coming up with similar chains. So it really has a nice balance between simplicity of rules and
a certain degree, a depth of gameplay. And I think, oh, depth of gameplay. Of course, everything is relative. Compared to how simple and intuitive the rules are, the depth of gameplay that the game it generates is considerable. Is considerable. So you have the nice balance there between planning and unpredictability, between diplomacy and backstabbing, between bluffing and getting bluffed and suffering that element, between control and luck, because when you're drawing those tiles, that is pure luck there. So very interesting design, because it feels pretty original, by the way. It doesn't feel like, oh, it's just like that game with one different thing. It feels pretty different. It has a very strong personality. I can't think off the top of my head another game that does something quite like it. It's area majority, area control, and yet those elements are cooked in a way that feels pretty original. So it's a game with a strong personality, very simple to play, very playable, but with a gameplay that has nuance and has many reasons to keep you interested, and also really good replay value, which I was surprised because it doesn't look like things change much. But once my daughters and I started playing it, we kept playing it over and over again. We got hooked. We tried different combinations every time, and they weren't always possible because of the players are influencing things on the board. And that also is what, of course, causes replay value, because you think of a new strategy and you don't get to pull it off. Then you're going to try again and again and again. The Court of Miracles, it's a simple game, gateway level, perfect for players of very casual games, but also I think there is enough here for the seasoned gamer. To me, a very fun, a very engaging game.